Here is your Golfer's Almanac for June 23rd. Today is the birthday of Lawson Little, born William Lawson Little Jr. in 1910 in Newport, Rhode Island. Little is the only golfer to have ever won the British Amateur and the U.S. Amateur in the same year twice. Only Harold Hilton, Bobby Jones, and Bob Dixon won the two titles in the same year, but only one time in their career. Little won it in consecutive years, 1934 and 1935. That's dominating. Little graduated from Stanford and after a long amateur career, turned professional in 1936 and won 8 times on the PGA Tour, including the 1940 U.S. Open at Canterbury outside of Cleveland. He beat Gene Sarazen in an 18-hole playoff, becoming only the 5th player to win the U.S. Open and the U.S. Amateur. Little was known to carry a lot of clubs in his bag, prompting the USGA to introduce the 14-club rule in 1938. Some say he carried 26 clubs when he won the 4 amateur titles, but only 14 when he won the U.S. Open in 1940. Today is the birthday of Sam Parks Jr., born Samuel McLaughlin Parks Jr. in Bellevue, Pennsylvania in 1909. Parks graduated from the University of Pittsburgh and helped to found the Panthers golf team in the 1920s. He turned pro in 1933 and won the U.S. Open in 1935 at Oakmont, his only major and only win on the PGA Tour. Parks was a club pro at nearby South Hills Country Club and knew Oakmont well. He was 2 shots better than Jimmy Thompson. Later that year, he played in the Ryder Cup matches at Ridgewood Country Club in New Jersey, facing Alf Perry, the reigning British Open champion. As far as I can tell, it's the only time the U.S. Open champion and British Open champion would play or have played in Ryder Cup matches. Parks made a 30-foot putt on the 36th hole to tie the match, allowing both to claim they were undefeated in Ryder Cup play. Parks died in Clearwater, Florida in 1997 at the age of 87. Colin Montgomerie has a birthday today, born Colin Stewart Montgomerie in 1963 in Glasgow, Scotland. His father was secretary of the Royal Troon Golf Club, where young Colin learned the game. He attended Houston Baptist University and played golf for the Huskies. Montgomerie turned pro in 1987 and played on the European Tour, winning 31 times and ranking 4th in all-time wins on that tour. He won the European Tour Order of Merit 7 years in a row and 8 times in total. Montgomerie never won on the PGA Tour, which is a surprise to me, but did finish second in 3 of golf's 4 majors. Monty played on 8 Ryder Cup teams and never lost a singles match. He was captain in 2010, leading the European team to a victory. Montgomerie's won 7 times on the Champions Tour and 9 times on the European Seniors Tour, where he's tied for 5th in all-time wins. Happy birthday, Colin. Flory van Donck was born on this day in 1912 in Duranko, Belgium. He is considered the greatest Belgian golfer ever, having won more than 50 tournaments worldwide and was twice runner-up in the Open Championship. Van Donck won 5 Belgian Opens, 5 Dutch Opens, 4 Italian Opens, 3 French Opens, the German and Swiss Open twice, and the Portuguese Open. He died in Belgium in 1992 at the age of 79. On this day in 1922, Walter Hagen became the first American to win the Open Championship, 1 stroke better than Jim Barnes and George Duncan at Royal St. George's. This was the first of Hagen's 4 Open Championships in his 4th major of the 11 he would eventually win. Hagen had beat Barnes at the previous year's PGA Championship. Also on this day in 1963, at the Country Club in Brookline, Julius Boros won his 2nd U.S. Open title in a playoff against Arnold Palmer and Jackie Cupid. In the final round, Palmer missed an 18-inch putt on the infamous 17th hole to fall 2 back of Cupid. Then Cupid doubled the 18th to set up the playoff the next day. To be fair, the weather was extreme, with the wind gusts approaching 50 miles an hour. But Boros birdied 2 of the final 3 shots and then watched from the clubhouse as both Palmer and Cupid tied him. And at the 1963 LPGA Western Women's Open at Maple Bluff in Wisconsin, Mickey Wright was 9 shots better than Kathy Whitworth, winning her 10th major. At this point in her career, Whitworth had won 2 LPGA events, but after this loss, she won 8 tournaments in 1963, including the very next week, on her way to winning 88 career LPGA victories. And on this day, in 1972, Richard Nixon signed into law Title IX, prohibiting discrimination at schools receiving funding from the federal government. This dramatically increased the number of women participating in sports at not only the university level, but at all levels. On this day in 1977, Fred Corcoran died in White Plains, New York. He was 72 years old. Corcoran started as a caddy working for Francis Ouimet and Alexa Sterling at Belmont Country Club in Boston. He went on to manage the careers of Sam Snead and a long list of other golfers over the years, including Tony Lima, Tom Weiskopf, and Ken Venturi. Also, Babe Zaharias, who he entered into the 1945 Los Angeles Open. He was the first woman to play in a PGA Tour event. Corcoran helped to found the LPGA Tour in 1950 and the Golf Writers Association of America. Corcoran claimed to have 3-putted in 48 countries. Great. Rest in par, Fred Corcoran. Opal Hill died on this day in 1981 in Kansas City, Missouri. She was 89 years old. Hill was a founding member of the LPGA in 1950 and won 2 majors, the Women's Western Open in 1935 and 1936. She was an outstanding amateur golfer and was so popular she was recruited to be a part of one of the 13 founders of the LPGA at the time, despite being in her 50s. Rest in par, Opal Hill. Finally, Frank Stanahan died on this day in 2013. He won the British Amateur Championship in 1948 and 1950 and won some 70 amateur tournaments over his career. Born into a wealthy family, his father had founded Champion Spark Plug Company. Stanahan grew up at Inverness in Toledo and received instruction from Byron Nelson. He was an early proponent of weight training and actually traveled to tournaments with his weightlifting gear. Stanahan was a major influence in Gary Player's lifelong commitment to fitness. Stanahan is also credited with raising the awareness of the Open Championship. His wealth allowed him to play in 8 consecutive Open Championships, when for other touring pros the trip was not economically feasible. He was runner-up in the 1947 and 1953 Open Championship, both times as an amateur. Here's a quote today from the sports writer Dan Jenkins. Title IX came along and changed a lot of things for the better, but nevertheless, it meant that money became more important in sports. That's it for today in golf history. Play fast, repair all the pitch marks you can find, and keep your golf ball in the short grass. Your Golfer's Almanac is a GolfToons production. It's written, produced, and narrated by me, Michael Duranko. I invite you to check out our original golf illustrations and the humor essays that accompany each of the golf cartoons. Tour Backspin is a weekly golf history newsletter that celebrates the PGA Tour in the 1960s and 70s with tie-ins to today's tour. They offer a bunch of content, contests, and other interesting bits. See the link in the show notes and subscribe.